that down. Show me the next slide, Tom. Let me share something with the fine folk. That's the Colosseum at Rome. 2,000 years ago, Rome was described as the eternal city. They called it because they just couldn't even ever believe that it would be conquered or destroyed. The leader at that time was Caesar Augustus, and he believed he was the Son of God. And the people believed he would rise from the dead and that he would live forever. So they built him an opulent palace. They spent decades building structures that still survive even today. On the coins you would read, Caesar is Lord. He called himself Son of God. On the buildings they would say, for the glory of Rome. And worship in those days was Caesar worship. You worshiped him as God or as the Son of God. Now, for the upper 1% of Rome, somewhat like America, life was very, very, very good. The wealthy elite consumed 25 million gallons of wine every year in the city. And they ate so much food that they even built places called vomitoriums, where after you had a great meal, you could go and get rid of it and go back and start eating again. Indulgence, ingratitude. That wasn't a mindset for the people of Rome. It was just the way the upper crust lived. Now, you've seen the movies about Rome, this movie or that movie, and Rome is a very romantic place now. And so you have a very different perspective on Rome than the real Rome in the days of Jesus. Now, switch gears with me. This is Manhattan. It is the most cramped piece of real estate in America. It has a population density of 30 people per acre. And I'm right here with you. Everybody uses the word acre and nobody ever defines it. All right. I know we use it to measure land. An acre, if it was square, would be 209 foot on one side and 209 foot on the other side. That really don't get it too well. So let me give you a good way to see an acre. Take a football field. And I'm not going to say a word about football. I got you before church, so. Take a football field, cut off the end zones, and you have just a little bit more than 1 acre. Now, why is that important? Because, some of you, your backyard is an acre, maybe more. But I want all of you to pretend your backyard is an acre. Just a little bit below the size of a football field. And in your backyard, I want you to imagine 30 more people living where you live. That's what it's like in Manhattan. All right, shift gears again. This is Bombay, India. It is the most cramped piece of land in the world. Their population density is 130 people an acre. So I want you to take your backyard, you already got 30 people in it, and I want you to add 100 more people. And that's what it's like to live in Bombay. All right, where am I going with this? Well, shift gears one last time. This is a Roman Colosseum. The population density of ancient Rome, 300 people per acre. And that's not even counting the farm animals, because the farm animals stayed near the people and often slept with the people. That means in your backyard, you now need to add 200 more people so that altogether you have 300 people living where you live. Tallest buildings in Rome were only 5 stories, as far as they could get them up. People lived in what we would call a little cubicle. No ventilation for the fire that they used to cook with. No running water. In fact, people hardly ever took a bath. There was no sewer systems. In fact, the roads, the streets were the sewer system, and they were often very, very muddy. The average age of death in Rome in the days of Jesus was 25. Half the babies died at birth. And of those who lived were condemned very often to the streets or to death. Not unusual at all for parents to die long before their children became teenagers. And their attitude. We have a letter written by a young Roman officer to his pregnant wife. Very short to the point. If it's a boy, keep it. If it's a girl, throw it in the river. Children were seen as non-people. In fact, Plato, and I know, you thought that Plato was so cool. Plato wrote, "Children are nothing more than a mob of motley appetites, pains, and pleasures." Got that right. Pliny, another philosopher. "None among the animals is so prone to tears." And Plutarch. This guy's right on it. "Newborn babies are more like a plant than a human being." That's what Rome thought about the most innocent of God's creation. And right above children were slaves. Over a third of the population had a tattoo that basically said they belonged to somebody else. Stories are horrific. On one occasion, a man owned a mine, and it took 20,000 slaves to work the mine. And it was cheaper to work them to death, literally to death, than to take care of them. So he just bought more slaves. In the Colosseums, there were slaves who fought slaves to the death just to entertain the family. Children were bought as sex slaves. Pedophilia was accepted and commonplace in the days of Jesus in ancient Rome. In school, you heard the great advice of Socrates when he said, "Know thyself." And all these years, you thought that was a really good piece of advice. It's a good self-help principle. Know yourself. Except when Socrates said it, he meant, know where you belong in the pecking order. Know who is better than you. And don't stir up any trouble. In other words, if you're a slave or if you're a woman, stay in your place. Because, see, just above slaves were women. They were considered property. They had no rights. I'm not even going to go with the stories. They're horrible. And add crime to all of this. People stayed in this place because they were too terrified just to go a mile or two away from the city. And natural disasters, they built the city in the wrong place. And then the entire city worshipped Caesar. And the gods of Caesar, they were capricious. They were angry. They were distant. They were cruel. It wasn't a religion you want to be part of. And that's what ancient Rome really looked like in the days of Jesus. And somehow in a Roman prison, the Apostle Paul was able to write these words we shared last Sunday. I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, Paul, how can you be content in a city like Rome that treats children, slaves, and women so badly? How can you be content when Rome itself is the person that's beaten you and thrown you into jail? And he tells us his opinion in the next line. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me the strength. And I'm thinking, Paul, Jesus, really, is that your answer? Can you not do better? Well, what about Jesus? Jesus was born into that same Roman Empire, but Jesus elevated the value of children and women, and Jesus kept no slaves. He healed the sick. He brought dead people back to life. He didn't live in a fancy palace on the hill. He didn't wear purple robes like Caesar. He didn't have an army. He didn't collect taxes. He didn't rob his neighbors. In fact, he told his followers to love their neighbors. So in this Roman cell, Paul says, I have joy in my life. I'm content because I have Jesus in my life. Now, when Paul was in Rome, scholars think we had about 30,000 Christians there. And they were the ones who started burying the slaves. They were the ones who started rescuing the children. And they put them in homes. And the widows were taken care of. And women and slaves were given status in this new early church. And they built hospitals to take care of the sick. And the life expectancy of a Christian soon became much greater than an average citizen of Rome, which brought people into the church in record numbers, all because of Jesus. And it's from that same Roman prison that Paul writes these words. So in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. For all of you who were baptized, that's important, into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There's neither Jew or Gentile, slave or free, nor is there male and female, for you're all one in Christ Jesus. Those words changed Rome forever. You know the history from that moment on till today. And my point, I don't live in Rome. Never have. I live in a place called Galion, and from 20,000 feet in the air, that's what it looks like. We have safe drinking water. We have electricity 24/7. The truck comes by every week and picks up my trash. We have this really neat sewer system, and there's this little silver handle on the throne upstairs, and you just push the magic silver lever, and it's all taken care of. And even every once in a while, a truck comes by and just sweeps the road in front of my house. There are stores, many stores within walking distance, where I can find whatever I need to eat. And on most days, I have enough change in my pocket that I can afford to eat what I need. We have doctors and dentists and a hospital, all within walking distance. The average age of death, and I don't want to disappoint you or scare you, it's 77 in Galion. But you know what the population density is in Galion? About 2 people per acre. I haven't been flogged, I haven't been whipped or beaten or imprisoned for sharing my faith. And we love our children, we love our women, and we don't have slavery in Galion. So, why am I struggling so hard to become content? Why is contentment so hard for me to learn And the answer is what Shakespeare called the green-eyed monster. It's envy. It just robs us of gratitude. I'm going to tell you for a fact, envy will ruin your health, literally. It will make you sick. And it will ruin whatever relationships are important to you. Because envy causes us to constantly compare ourselves with what other people have. But you know, my problem is really not comparing so much. My problem is the second thing that envy often does: complaining. I love to complain. Raise your hand if you love to complain. I really love it. That's my hobby. It's probably yours too, but the problem is, when I complain, I am never going to learn how to become content. Ungrateful has to be one of the ugliest words in the English language. And what makes it so horrible is the fact that we don't see it. You know? You get a little pain in your life, you feel it. And if you get some joy and happiness, you feel that immediately. But ingratitude is hard to feel. We as a church need to be the most grateful people on this planet. We have so many good things because God is a good God, and He has given them to us. So I have 3 important but fairly short points to make. And here's number 1. The more I think I deserve, the less I'm going to be grateful for. That leads us to another incredibly ugly word in the English language: entitlement. There is a growing sense of entitlement in our country because there is a growing sense of ingratitude in our country. True story. There was a psychic in Philadelphia who sued Temple University Hospital because she claimed that a CAT scan they performed on her caused her to lose her psychic ability, and she had to close her business. You think that's crazy? The jury awarded her $988,000. But you know what I'm thinking? If you're a psychic, you should have known better. But nobody asked me. Common sense is just about gone in America. And it's being replaced with a sense of entitlement. I deserve this. I deserve that. It's my right. Craig Rochelle, he's a preacher out in the Midwest. He writes, "On my best day, I deserve hell. But because of Jesus, on my worst day, I get heaven." That's what I deserve in life. That's what I'm entitled to because of an ugly thing called sin. But that's why we Christians have nothing to complain about, because Jesus took care of that. He once healed 10 men from leprosy, which is a horrible skin disease. But only one of those 10 came back and said, "Thank you." And here's a second lesson that I'm going to give you about gratitude today. Unexpressed gratitude is ingratitude. In that passage, it says, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. It's a racial term in the days of Jesus. And Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" I lived in West Virginia too long. We pronounce it foreigner in West Virginia. Now, I have no doubt that all 10 of those men were ecstatic. They had a horrible disease which literally kept them away from the rest of the population of the world. And those other 9 guys, I'm sure, were filled with gratitude. I'm sure they were filled with joy. They just didn't come back and say thank you. And failing to express gratitude is ingratitude. I mean, even if you feel grateful, you need to express that gratitude for it to be complete. Because when you don't say thank you, your gratitude that you probably have becomes ingratitude because you simply never said thank you. And then one final observation this morning. Grateful people are contagious people. Now, you know how it is. A pessimistic, sarcastic person will suck the life right out of you. But on the other hand, a grateful person just, fills your life. But here's the fact. Kind of where we're heading with this whole thing. Gratitude needs to be shared. So let me give you some homework this week. Sit down and write a letter or give them a call or even a text. Somebody you're really grateful for because they've made a difference in your life. And just simply thank them for their investment in you. And the amazing thing about generosity is that that's going to bless you. And it will also bless them because gratitude is contagious. Now, Henri Nouwen, he was a professor at Harvard back when it was reputable. He left his professorship to live and work among mentally and physically challenged people, the community. And he writes something about gratitude is going to sound very different probably to most of us this morning. But I do want you to see a different perspective about what we're talking about. Here it is, and it's 3 slides for all we're going to look at. He writes, to be grateful for the good things in our lives is easy. But to be grateful for all of our lives, the good as well as the bad, the moments of joy as well as the moments of sorrow, the successes as well as the failures, the rewards as well as the rejection, that requires hard spiritual work. Simply saying, you got to be grateful for everything, not just the good stuff, but somehow you learn to be grateful for the bad stuff. Now he continues addressing that. Still, we are only grateful people when we can say thank you to all that has brought us to the present moment. As long as we keep dividing our lives between events and people we would like to forget, we cannot claim the fullness of our beings as a gift from God to be grateful for. I got to tell you, that's some heavy theology. And he ends the quote, let's not be afraid to look at everything that has brought us to where we are now and trust that we will soon see it in the guiding hand of a loving God. That's gratitude. You know, those 10 guys that were healed with leprosy did do one thing right. They recognized that Jesus was the only one that could heal them. And that's why we need to be grateful, because on our best day we deserve death. And on our worst day, Jesus gives us life. That's what it means to be a member of the church. None of us deserve or are entitled to a second chance, but we get one in Jesus. That's why we call this series the Christmas Hope, because Jesus is a huge part of the hope that we have. That's why people need to feel the grace here, and people need to feel the love here, and people need to feel gratitude in this place. And that's why we need to share. But if you let negativity and complaining rule this place, you will never discover the joy of gratitude. You have 30 days now, starting tomorrow. It is the most commercialized time of the year. And in this next 30 days, we're going to do everything possible to help all of us experience what Paul said about contentment. Would you stand as we share together a final song?
1, 2, intro, 2, 3, 4.